probably not what most people are expecting. When you hear a webinar or a class, you're really expecting to hear something very factual, and people that know me know that I am all about the non-facts, and that is my favorite thing to study in, is I mean, if somebody were to give you a pen, you could either do it in the way that you were taught, or you could do it in the way that is best for you. And so everything I'm teaching isn't necessarily a fact in the way you would learn in an art college or any formal class, but this is everything I've learned that is best for me, and I'm here to share that knowledge with you, so that maybe you can take that pen and learn what's best for you in your sketchbook. Because like I was just talking to Jamie and Chris before the webinar, people, you go out and you spend all this money on your art supplies, and I have a Cintiq and software. It's all so expensive, and as artists, we're not exactly always making the most money to go out and just buy all of this. And we get it, and we're like, now what do I do with it? My fiance knows I'm always like, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? But then when it always comes down to it, I'm always doing this one thing that you're going to see here in just a second. You can probably see my screen. And that's just what I found is best for me. A great example of this is handwriting. I was once reading, I don't remember where, in handwriting, that we all can write our names, and we have a natural signature, and you can make that signature bubbly, you can make it scratchy, you can make it any which way, but the truth is in the end, you have a sincere signature, and that's the same way it is with drawing, and it's the same way it is with painting. Is you have to use your sincere signature and your sincere stroke. Art is like a calligraphy, I once heard in an article from, I wish I could remember any of my sources, but I really like that, because that's just the truth of all of it, is that when you are painting, when you make any kind of artwork, you have to be sincere, and you have to use that stroke as not something to make something up, but as something that is sincere from in you. So I'm going to go through some of my work here, some of the things I think is a good example for what I'm teaching today. And you can see there's a similarity in these, and you can see there's this movement. Can you see my cursor, Jamie?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, I just want to make sure as I'm going around and showing you the movements. You can see there's a movement in each thing that I've created here. And some of these are traditional, and some of them are digital and traditional. But anyway, I'm just using a pen. And what you really see in all this is you just see movement. You just see movement, you see rhythm, and it's almost as though that there's an arrow. Excuse me, this is an arrow at each end of it, just showing you where all the lines are going and what it's making up. And sometimes the arrows go inward and around, and they make circles, and they form something. They form something that's deeper than, for example, this hair here is in my, like I said, not a factual point of view, but from my point of view, something that's deeper than just drawing hair. It was a movement from me, from within. It was something sincere, like my handwriting, or in this case, my artwork. And I try and incorporate that sincereness as much as possible. When I work like this on anything large scale, small scale, I try to dream as much as possible. And the reason I use the word dream so much, a lot of people think that's kind of a dramatic, very Instagram-y kind of word. But the reason I use that word is because there's a difference, in my uneducated opinion, between dreaming and thinking. And I think there's a good balance of both, because thinking is very logical, and dreaming is all about letting your mind drift and letting your mind let go. Because we all have such a stressful day. I mean, no matter what you do, and whether you're an artist or anything, stress is one of the biggest elements of life, especially in modern culture today. And I'm sure back then too, but as far as we know our modern culture more than we know our historic one. And that's, at the end of the day, half the people across the nation come home to a bottle of wine, and there's a reason for it. So this process I'm showing you here is my mind drifting. It's myself letting go. And in fact, I even remember the end of uh, this drawing here was at the end of a very, very long day. And because of this drawing, I was able to bring my mind somewhere else and also bring something forward from that moment. So in the end, I got something to show from it, and I didn't just sit on a chair and look into space. I was active and I was productive with myself, and I got to learn a little more about who I am. So there are so many things as far as why that I tend to let go this way, but it's these things that you learn that you can imply in your artwork. I'm going to be talking about that a little more later. Um, but those things that you learn in your day and those things that stress you out, you can turn that negative into that positive and bring it out through this canvas. This is actually traditional, brought through Painter, because I can't necessarily light up my sketch page with a white Bic pen. It doesn't work like that. So I bring it into Painter, and it helps me to bring a lot more depth into it. Um, but you can see in my work, there's always that direction I was just talking about. There's always that movement, and again, that's just my sincere stroke. And no matter what I do, I can try a paintbrush, I can try oils, I always end up coming back to this pen, and it annoys me because I really want to get more into big, bulky stuff. You'll see me sometimes post on Facebook a painting after about a month of drawing, and then I go back to drawing again. And it's really just what's best for me. And uh, I'm hoping that by some of the things I'll be explaining in this webinar, that you can learn what's best for you. Sometimes I will use reference, and most times I don't. Like, this is my son and a week old, and I could not help but draw him that week, and he was laying in his cradle just like this. So I did do this from life in a sense, but I used the movement that I felt from it, and I used everything that I was feeling for him right then in that moment. And that's one of the things that is so important about that sincerity, is that if you're not being sincere with your stroke, you're not able to show what you're feeling. Because if I'm trying to use something very bulky and what do you say, broad, well, I'm not a very broad person. I can be if you tick me off, but generally I'm pretty soft spoken, and so this was, I mean, that's how I create. And I've learned this movement through a lot of sketching and a lot of dreaming. Even though that I may be looking at it in life, I'm still dreaming at it. I'm not necessarily just observing it. So here are some traditional sketches, uh, and I kind of lit this one up a little bit. But the reason, there it goes, my cursor lagged off. Um, the reason that I have this style that you're seeing right here is because of everything that I'm talking about. And again, it's all about having a sincerity with your work, um, and really meaning it. And if you don't mean it, it's not going to show. And even this over here, this is an abstract piece. It's not really anything, but there's something about it that's more sincere than some. And I would never go as far as to say that I'm Leonardo da Vinci, but I will say that I have gotten as far as I have with my work, and I am as good as I am because when I put my pen to the paper, I mean it. And that's the way I think every artist should be, is if we mean it, we are more successful with it because we are more successful with ourselves, and not just learning the ink, but, and this is going to sound really weird, but every artist will know what I'm talking about, not just learning the ink, but letting that ink learn you, letting it be a culture with you and to grow with you. So I'm going to start a new canvas here, and I'm going to kind of go through a sketch with you and show you what it is, my thought process, everything that helps me to do what I do. I mean, I've never been to art school. I think I've taken one very vague art class, and at the time I was way too young to even understand what it was. Um, so this is really all self-taught, so forgive me if I say something that maybe is just fact to me. Um, but that's, I mean, even though it may not be fact to you, it's really how that I've gotten where I am and why that my work looks the way that it does. So, also, Jamie, there should be a question panel. You guys can ask questions while that we're going. And Jamie, feel free to just completely interrupt me while I'm talking, because I'd love to answer your question. And I'm going to start. I've actually got a list of notes here that I made for you guys about my process. This class is called Ink and You because this is about you getting to know your medium, and your medium, like I was talking about, getting to know you. And if you're a beginner, if you're starting off, that's going to sound really weird. But as you draw, you're going to start to understand that. You're going to start understanding, oh, I get it now. This ink really is like, I'm looking at it, and oh, wow, that my drawing kind of got to know me there. So the more you draw, the more you do your sincere stroke, the more you're going to realize everything that means. So my first thing here to go over is what wakes you up. What's something that inspires you, and that's the most important thing for me. I work full-time at a hospital in a kitchen, and those that work with me know that I spend 99.9% of my day daydreaming about what inspires me, and they know that by how lazy I probably come off, or how out of it that I am. The reason that's important is because if you don't have that inspiration, if you don't have that background of motive and that warmth within you that you want to express, well, then you don't have really anything to express. Alan Watts is one of my favorite philosophers, and he once said that he was talking about that if you become a master of writing and you have nothing to express, well, what he was saying in the end was, well, you have nothing to express. So you need something. You need something to go by. You need some warmth to show. And so your inspiration, what inspires you, is so important. And like my biggest inspirations are my kids and my little family, definitely, this is going to sound corny and weird, but like my mom and dad and the warmth that I've found from my family and friends. And without that inspiration that I have, I wouldn't really have anything to show. I wouldn't have any of that home to express in my work. So I'm going to start with I don't like starting with a perfectly white canvas, and that's the reason that is because if you find print paper or paper that's perfectly white, it's probably the print paper that I end up using 75% of the time, and trust me, you shouldn't use it. So everything I'm doing right now is probably pretty self-explanatory. I'm only using a pen because I want people that are using this or watching this webinar to be able to take this outside of just Painter. However, I will be doing some things that you can unfortunately just do in Painter, such as some of the layers, and you'll see. So I'm starting that because it really shouldn't be perfectly white, and actually you should make that gray. And I'm going to set that as my paper color, because that way if I go to erase something, it's still my paper color, whereas if I didn't make that my paper color, the default paper color would be white. So those of you that are using Painter, make sure that you go to Canvas and set whatever color you have as your paper color. That's very important. But that's only for when I really drop my layers. First I make a new layer, and that way things can be a little more flexible. I can stretch it. And now when I start this, I'm going to remind everybody, and I'm going to remind myself right now, to have zero expectations when you work, because when you set an expectation, you're tending to aim for something, and when you don't come to the the outcome that you want, you become frustrated, and when you're frustrated, you really have a hard time working. Art is not, it doesn't work if you're not really having fun with it or doing what you love doing. If you're doing it and if you become frustrated, then chances are your whole drawing is going to crash. And so setting that zero expectations with yourself, that means quality, that means what it is. I mean, we're talking sketchbook here. It's really important. And again, these are just things that I find helpful for me, but I hope that they help you. If you're drawing something from life, I'll be talking about that here in a minute. but for the most part, I'd really like to show you guys how to draw something from your mind. So how I start personally is I don't really start anywhere specific like I've been talking about. I keep a low opacity, and if you're using a big pen or something, just remember to draw really lightly. Don't press. Oh, I'm still stuck on that color. Don't press until that you know you want it there. Just let your pen do the work. And right now I'm holding my Cintiq pen, and I'm just working on an old Cintiq, the 12WX, or however you say it. And I'm just letting my pen drag. I'm not doing anything specific. And I'm doing this for all the reasons I've talked about, is I'm not setting an expectation. I'm having fun with it. And as this webinar has got close, people have asked me, so are you nervous to be teaching a little class here? My fiance, and I say, no, if I get nervous, I'm not going to be able to do anything. And that's true. I mean, I don't think I'm really nervous anyways. However, if I was to be, it would ruin this whole thing. So again, I'm not setting an expectation. And now the reason that I'm adding all of these swirls is because that's something that I love. So as you're drawing, find a stroke that you really like doing. Maybe it's squares, maybe it's like a triangular format or zigzags or something that really inspires you. So again, I'm just dragging this because I'm not really setting anything in definition. And when sketchbooking like this, I am not really going for any of the rules. I really study a lot on art rules. And again, back to my lady, she's got to hear about it every night. Every time I learn something, she's got to hear about it for about an hour about, oh my God, I've missed out on all this. She's probably saying, uh-huh. But when I'm setting zero expectations like this, I'm leaving room for my mind to drift. And you can see this profile of what seems like a childlike face emerging from this. And the reason that is so amazing to me is because I did not think, excuse me, I did not think of this as that I'm going. Oh, sorry, it lagged on me there. I didn't think of this as I was going. It simply came to me. And the sky is really what inspires me with that, because as we look up to the clouds and we see some very detailed things, well, we didn't really teach ourselves to see that big whale up there. It just pulls from our brain, and it pulls from what we really know. And I believe in taking an anatomy class, yes, but I really haven't done that much research on anatomy, and I find it fascinating that I'm able to do, these animated lifelike faces just off of me, and maybe they're not completely proportionally correct, but I'm having a lot of fun with it, a lot more fun than I would be trying to, just do this as a math problem or just trying to figure out, spend my whole time drawing just figuring out where everything goes. Instead, I'm learning where all these things are, and like this right here, this curve just showed me, oh my God, there's another face emerging over here. And the reason I love faces is because they really set the emotion, and they're really part of what I love drawing. And as I go, it doesn't have to be completely from the abstract. I can add to it as I know. Now, one thing is that when you do find something pretty, like I find the way this is set up pretty, this boy that's coming in here, is that you never want to look at like a feature like, oh my God, I really love this little thing here. If you want to adjust it, okay, but if you really like it, don't go, really drafting in, because you're going to ruin it. You're going to ruin what you like about it. However, I'm going to adjust this here, the way his nose tips out like that. There we go. you'll just know as you go along. And I don't consider myself, like I said, Leonardo da Vinci, but the way that I'm doing this here, I think should work for anyone. And I think if you're not looking to um, make money off of your drawing, well, have fun with it. Learn something you while that you feel good about it. And maybe I've run out of room here, and maybe I like this, what's going on here. What I'm actually going to do digitally, this is one of those things, I'm actually going to very lightly erase it. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because I can let this face be something else later too. Maybe I don't want that to be my final sketch. If I'm using a pencil, which is actually rare, I use big pens most of the time. I'll actually fade it out and I'll start something. Or if I were working with a big pen, I would have made sure this is very light so that it can become something else too. The biggest thing that inspires me is, believe it or not, nature. And the reason I say that is because one of my best friends, his name is Reuben Smith, he once said the most profound thing to me, and I don't even think he realized it. I'm actually going to go ahead. I really enjoyed making this face here, but it's not working for me in this digital part. And although I'm not holding myself to that expectation, I think that I want to work over it. Anyways, excuse me, Ruben, he was talking to me about art, and I don't remember what we were talking about. And suddenly he said, "Beautiful things take time." And as he said that, I think I was looking at a tree nearby or a plant, something. I was actually staying with him in Santa Barbara, and it was very profound to me because I realized that if a tree were to be rushed, if anything that we really enjoyed in nature were to be rushed, it wouldn't be so beautiful. And on top of that, what's going on there is that if a tree were to grow out of the ground and just rush itself out, well, I mean, the thing would be falling apart. But it takes time. So I'm actually going a little fast for what I would like to be doing right now. Um, but in the meantime, I'm creating all these lines that are slowly becoming something, and I'm being patient. I'm leaving myself room to be patient with myself, with like this thing I just lowered out of here, and to give myself time to come up with that idea that really, really makes me happy, or I really, really enjoy. Because all these things are great that I'm doing right now, all these swirls, these things that really make no sense right now. But what's really going to make me happy is the outcome that I took the time to. There are so many nights where I actually, I spend all night drawing and I get so frustrated and I realize at the end, oh, you weren't taking your time and you didn't come up with anything. You didn't do anything that you enjoyed. And I realized at that moment that it just backs up my theory once more, um, of Rubin saying beautiful things take time. They're not rushed. And so don't rush yourself. I'm going to go into the rest of this and I'm not going to rush myself. I started to think, why is this not coming together like I want to? And then I started to think, oh, there we go again. Especially if you're working digitally, you should definitely take your time because, I mean, I will say I love working in Painter, and it's definitely my preference over traditional. And there's just something about it that I mean, I could really go into it, but I'd sound like a commercial. Um, However, drawing traditionally, I will say I would be farther than this. But this is allowing me more creativity. I'm probably not going to go into that. I'll go into that later. Different video, different time. So one of those things, one, two, or maybe more, maybe all of you are thinking, what is he doing? And trust me, this is the best way to go. I used to get really nervous and I'd spend my time doing this and like, am I really going to create something tonight? Because as much as it may seem like it, I have my phone on me nearly all day. As much as it seems like I have a lot of time. But from the time I get home, I don't have a lot of time to create artwork. So that time is very precious to me. And when I end up rushing, all that time is just wasted. I think I enjoy a profile coming out of one part or the other of any sketch. There's something about it that shows an emergence, and it's pretty easy. I mean, it doesn't take a master to create a face that's coming out of something. So from the side, it's back and forth, and I think anybody can do it. But I think it's special. It shows. It's just like creating. If I add a leaf over here, this whole thing suddenly looks nature bound, and if I show life over here, it brings the sketch to life. It shows something more in here. I do think it is important to study proportions and figure out the basic math of the head. And even if you're not the master at it, then when you go to draw something or do something like this, your brain will really pull out of your subconscious, and it'll work with itself. And you don't necessarily. I believe in looking at reference, and I'm always trying to draw my kids and family, and so I mean, there's so many reasons why you should. But I'm also a big believer, like I said, just sometimes just allowing yourself to dream. I'm going to do some softer lines and maybe go back on some of this again. And the importance of that is that although I'm creating some form of movement here, when I create it with these bold lines like this, they come to the front. And this is, I should have added this in the beginning. When I thought of this class, when I was asked to teach this, I thought, well, I don't necessarily always make finished pieces. And that's really what I want to show people, especially when this goes up on YouTube, is I don't want to show you how to make a finished piece. I want to show you how to enjoy making a gesture, a movement of yourself, and like I was talking about earlier, making sure that you have that sincere motion. Just dropping your pen and letting most of it do the work for you. Don't think of anything, just let go and dream. And sometimes my sketches will take longer than others, but in the end, I feel so much better. And it's really, like I said, some people go home and drink a bottle of wine, and others well, this is it. When you're drawing somebody from a different angle, always, even though it's good to have this, I have learned always make a very vague line. That way you know what you're doing. Once you find that face, do make some marks that show you what you're doing. And that way you don't lose it in the movement, which is sometimes good, but sometimes you really want to add that life in there. I'm going to make this eye really big, and there's really going to be no reason for it. I'm letting my pen do the work here. I'm not going to overdo it. I'm just going to imply. Maybe I'll make this eye even bigger. And the reason I do that is because my brain will think that that's what I should do. And there's really no deciding. If I choose not to, then I'm deciding. And if I ever decide on anything in this form of sketch and in this form of art, of, like I said, dreaming, well, then you're not dreaming. You're just you're making choices at that point. And I mean, if my brain thinks of it, if my brain thinks of hair flow that should be coming out of here, then that's definitely what I should do. And again, I'm no Leonardo. The reason I have this up here, for those of you that use Painter or anything digital, is because it's so easy to undo, so easy to go back with your work. And I think that working digitally, if we get that feeling, we can just hack away at anything, and it doesn't matter. We can undo anytime, and we can delete that layer, or do what I'm doing and take my eraser, a big part of it, and going back. And that's having this up here makes that undo that I want to do a lot more sincere than just Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. I try and stay away from that mindset. So as you do this traditionally, you'll be able to blend, and in some ways have more of a different kind of fun with your work. I almost want to say that traditional art and digital art have some of the same foundation, but are almost two different forms of art. But what I'm going to do here digitally now, that is something I've been doing especially lately, is I'm actually going to darken the canvas. I have this airbrush ready, and this is just a digital airbrush. There's nothing special about it. It just does exactly what you would think it would. It's just a soft brush, and I'm going to lay this over all of my dark lines, and I'm going to choose a cool color, and just very lightly. And the reason for that is because then when I go to put my light into my drawing, or whatever else may come out of this, there's also going to be I can use a warm color. So I'm just going to be very gentle. Now this is not going to have the outcome that you think, I think. And since I'm darkening it, should be somewhat somewhat of a direction, even though I may not be using a line. I'm going to make it go from one end to the other. I use my navigator because I use Cintiq, and I don't like reaching up to my keyboard. I'm too lazy for that. So it just makes it all nice if it's on screen. You don't want to darken it too much that you lose your drawing. Oops. Kind of reset my Wacom settings, so I think it's popping up. I do want to take out, I want to lower this away. So when I put darkness in here, I start to see a whole nother potential, because now we're not working with one line or the other, or we're not working with just line art anymore. Now we're working at bringing the light out of this painting. And I can't call it a painting, I'm sorry. I never really know what to call it digitally. Drawing, I should say. However, as I'm looking at what light to bring out, there's a whole new level of potential, because now you're not just bringing more detail into this eye here. You're not bringing more detail into this. You're bringing light out of it, and that's a very sensitive thing. But I think it's a form of impressionism that I've found, and it's something I've really been enjoying. So that's really what the other half of this webinar is going to be. Or should I say 20 minutes? I think I have 20 minutes left, and that's perfect. See, do I have anything on my notes that I'm sure I've missed most everything I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah, well, the biggest thing with sketching for me that I love so much is that, naturally I'm gonna be straight up. I'm a grumpy person, and everybody that knows me I can be really grumpy, and doesn't mean I'm always grumpy, but when we're grumpy, I mean, that's obviously means we've got some stress going on, we've got something to worry about. I have a big heart, and I have a lot to worry about. I have 2 babies and a beautiful lady that relationships can be very hard. And one thing I love about drawing is that as you draw, you learn about life. You learn, and I'm going to explain this a little further, is that I've learned to be, for example, positive with my work, that no good outcome comes out of artwork unless you're positive about it. So I'm going to, I'm kind of running out of time for what I want to do here. No good outcome comes out of being negative, excuse me. And so you learn these things about what is best for your artwork, or even just your sketchbook, like I'm trying to show you now, and you get to imply that to your life. You get to come back and you say, I know that there's going to be no good outcome today if I'm not positive about it, or I know there's going to be I'm not going to be nearly as happy with my evening if I'm not positive about it, or if I make an expectation, for example. And that is one of the biggest reasons that I paint, is because I need to learn that self transformation with my work and myself. And that's nothing really spiritual. It's nothing that's too big. That's just the way it is. And I think every good artist learns about themselves and what they could do better in life through what they could do better in drawing. I learned to be patient, for example. So this is really weird, but really what I'm getting out of this is there's a young lady really trying to emerge over here to me, trying to be the star of the show. And I think I'm going to listen to that, as difficult as she seems. See, for example, this is where that intuition kicks in. This curve right here is most definitely the beginning of her nose. And I go through a lot of pages, which is one reason I love working digitally. Is I don't have to go through a ream of paper like I used to at my mom's house when I was like 14 and go through all of her print paper um, and have nothing to show for it. Working digitally, you just have that canvas. If you don't like it, if it was a piece of work that you just didn't work out for you, trash it or save it for later. Bring it into something else. I've done that before, and that way you're not throwing away all this paper. It's amazing I saw a whole face off with just a nose. Sometimes it's all it takes, I guess. As Gandalf says, follow your nose. So there's absolutely nothing technical about the way that I draw, and I really always show my best of what I do. But even right now, even this is not like something that like I would ever add to my portfolio, but this is definitely my process. This is definitely what I have to show, and maybe it might be at the end. However, I guess my point is that excuse me, it's hard to talk and draw unless you're talking to your 1-year-old. She sometimes helps me. Forgot what I was saying there. That's okay. So now this is coming to life. And as I do that, I have this whole drawing here that has this to show. And that's what I'm choosing out of this dream that I'm having. I'm having this dream with my work, and I'm going to back out of this. I'm going to keep it subtle. This is why my work has that really subtle, faded look. And I'm choosing this part of the drawing here. And now as you see, as I start to bring out all this, now look at all this potential that I have for her hair here. And this is not something I thought of. So yes, I say you should learn some things, but when you're drawing, don't worry about the technical part. And that's just for me. That's not educated. Just have fun with it. And I think you'll be a lot more happy when you don't set that expectation for yourself. I kind of got talking about what Ruben said earlier, and I kind of stopped before I really went into what I said, was trying to say in that. So through what Ruben said, my greatest inspiration has become a tree, and we have so many trees around, and I picked a tree because we have so many around, and they're a good reminder to me as I'm thinking about art all day that this piece, this thing that is inspiring me, this thing that's trying to come out it's going to take time. And the most beautiful tree is the biggest, took the longest. It did not rush itself, and its process was completely beautiful because that it wasn't. Now, generally, I would sit here for a couple more hours, um, or I would save it until tomorrow night. I'm kind of running out of time here, I believe. But now you can definitely see I'm actually quite happy with this because I've definitely shown my process, and how I like to work. Even if there's a subconscious part of the picture, I can still add to it to help me add some detail and light to this piece or sketch. It can become a finished piece of work from here. You can look at it and maybe start another. Maybe you want to do a painting based off of the dream that you had. I'm actually going to be opening a YouTube channel this evening. I was out and about, and I grabbed a microphone and some other things just for this webinar, because if I didn't grab this microphone, you would hear my very loud laptop fan, and that's about all you would hear. So I thought, hey, this is going to be kind of fun. I'll actually make a YouTube video or channel. I'll start it. I've always wanted to. I've never really had the courage to until now. And I'll be showing a lot more about very in detail specific things about specifically Painter or other sketches. There's really only so much you can cover in an hour. It's insane because it's a whole hour. I can go over my hour by a bit. I think that's the first message I actually looked up to see. I'm guilty. I'm 100% guilty. I'll go over my hour by a bit. Did I miss any questions? Let's see here. Give me just 1 second here. All right. No, I don't think I did. Feel free to ask questions, guys. Generally, I'd be rushing right now, but I know if I rush, what will happen? I will ruin it. I am no longer like this, and it'll end up in the garbage with actually not many others. I kind of like to save everything, and I'm kind of a digital file hoarder like that. Anyone that's seen my desktop has seen how
Justin?
Yes, sir.
There are now a couple questions in there if you want to jump over and look at them.
All right.
They're coming in pretty good now.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so it looks like just one. Is that correct?
I see more, but if you click on them, then you can answer them.
I just see chat. Let's see here, attendees. Uh-oh. Did I do something?
Okay. Here, I'll read them off to you then.
All right, let's do that.
What equipment do you recommend to get into digital work?
You know, I asked that same question to myself so many times, and I do recommend a Cintiq. I will have to say that. And you really can work with any tablet. However, if you do have the extra money to get a Cintiq, do it. And the reason I say that is because if you're going to work with the line, if you're going to be very specific with your work, you got to do it hands-on. And you know, you'll see some artists that are very good with their intuitions, and they're pros. I mean, one of my favorites, I can't really pronounce his name because I've actually never heard it spoken. He's in a different country. His name is Sergi, and he does paintings, but he's very, he goes by Pelang, and he does Photoshop works, but he's very specific, and he uses, I think, like a small Intuos medium or something like that. I saw his workspace once, and it was really nothing special, but personally, I say a Cintiq. and try the 30-day trial of Painter. You're going to love it no matter what. If you can afford a Cintiq, they're quite expensive, which is why I have an older one. Go ahead and get yourself one of those and just take your time. Most everything that you actually see in my portfolio actually was done by an Intuos, and I only recently got the Cintiq, and I mean, so I can say get a Cintiq, but I can also say I just got mine, and it's simply just helping me out.
All right. When you say that you sketched with a Bic pen, do you actually mean just a ballpoint Bic pen?
Yes, and specifically that brand. The reason I say that is because when you put your Bic pen down, you can, let's see here. When I put this pen down, this is how a Bic pen acts. I'm not putting any pressure on my tablet. See that little line there? That helps me to dream. That helps me to let go. And I can do everything that I want to with that. And then later on, I can darken it up or add some weight to it to figure out the pieces that I want. You can see everything I did in here. So yes, actually very specifically Bic. And that's just the brand that I prefer, I gotta say. I'm sure maybe you can find a brand of pen that you like. I'm actually going to go ahead and grab it, just add water. And the reason is because I'm going to add this, pick up underlying color, because that's what this is going to do. Just want to blend this out of here for a second. Any more questions?
No, there's just two comments. One is this is both mesmerizing and fascinating.
Hmm.
And the other one is so inspirational to breaking down my own resistance / sticking points in my own art.
I gotta say with that one, I really like that, especially because yes, there is a resistance when you start painting. There's like this, you start and you're like, from the second, we never put a stroke down and say that was the stroke that I expected. You will never ever say that. I'm gonna go ahead and drop this. I'm gonna explain what I'm doing real fast. I'm gonna go back to that. I just dropped all my layers so I can very subtly play with the brightness and contrast. Just bring out what I did a little more. And to go back to what I was saying, when you lay down your stroke, I've learned that it's never the stroke that you want. And so that's where I really got that zero expectations. I'm adding some overlaid light here to bring out what was found in this. And sorry, I'm going back and forth here. I'm multi-conversationing here. You'll never lay down a stroke and say that was a stroke that I wanted. And so that's where, like I was just saying, that's where I get that I really shouldn't have any expectations, because every stroke I lay down, it can be a line, and it's not going to look how I imagined it. So why should I expect anything at all? Why should I expect anything out of myself? So that's very good. I like that word, resistance.
Okay, I'd love to see a bit of how you work with colors as well, adding the surface and colors to the sketch a bit.
Well, see, what I do is, keeping in mind warms and cools and opposites, if I'm working on this side of the color wheel, the warm side, the opposite is the cool side over here. And the reason that's so important is because you can have, this will maybe help you understand just a little, you can have a color right here and have the same exact value. See, this is a value right here as I go back and forth. It's just a saturation. Have the same exact value and an opposite color, and they're going to stand out. Where if I turn that black and white and they're the same value, guess what's going to happen? They're the same thing. So the reason to have that opposite in colors is to have this stand out from this. Where if I were to colorize this whole thing, well, it doesn't stand out nearly as much now, does it? So I need that light, I need that warmth to come out of that. Like I was explaining earlier, I chose a cool for my background, and to bring warmth out of it, it feels important to me. So there are some times where I bring cool out. I bring a a purple out and I started as a green, but I always try and keep opposite when I'm sketching because um, you can't have something emerge if it's the same color. I might even drop everything, and sometimes I might just up my saturation just a little. And when I do, I've got to play with the hue. And I don't try and change it so much that I'm going over here, and because that's not what I did. I want to remember this for the moment that I made it in. And the only change I want to make is just to enhance what's already there, and only slightly, not so much that, and I'm guilty of sometimes when I'm drawing, I just, and this is one of my weaknesses, is I take a subject that I was doing like this, and I try and bring it out so much that I lose the actual drawing itself, and I lose everything I loved about it. So it's very important to keep in mind when you're adjusting your colors. But I think I'm going to actually call this, as much as this isn't, oh, you know what? I'm going to do something real fast that I just popped out to me. How did this not pop out before?
One more, Justin.
All right.
How long do you think you spend on a piece in general?
It depends. It depends on my mood, how much coffee I've had. The longest I think I've ever spent on a piece is 8 hours. And I will say that with that 8 hours comes much frustration, and I would have been better off with my result when I go back. And when you save something in Painter, when I save it like this, and then I save it again, it will create a back file. And sometimes I go back to that back file and I'm like, I really wish I would have just kept with what I had. Like, I love this, and this shows so much more of the moment of what I was doing rather than trying to fix it up and make it look finished. I think I'm going to call this for the most part finished. You can see that what we've really went over is zero expectations. I wasn't technical at all. There was no part of this that was technical whatsoever except for the color, and the only reason being for that was so that it could emerge. But other than that, I mean, I drew this octopus-looking thing. There was a face that was over here that I really wasn't fond of, but I didn't frustrate myself over it. I didn't try and correct it as much as I backed out of it, and I took that negative and turned it into this great positive that I have standing on top of my canvas here.
You got another one. You mentioned early on that you work full time doing something else. Do you foresee monetizing your artistic gift at any point?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I mean personally, this isn't a personal opinion. Is I believe in what you think about is what becomes of you, and I realize that the more excited I get about art, and the more I think, aha, I've done it. I figured out what I'm doing. Suddenly, I get like 5,000 commissions all at the same time, and that's when I start to struggle. But I'm starting to learn a pace in what I'm doing and learning by failure. And I think actually my gal and I were just talking recently about we're thinking about making it a full-time thing. And even if I'm working part-time, I'm a type 1 diabetic, and so that's a big bill. And to jump into art it's a big leap of faith. And we're starting to get to a point where we're willing to, lower my productivity of the kitchen at the hospital I work at, and start doing something that means more to me. Being a little irrational here, I should probably be, like I said, more subtle. Now, one thing I want to point out is when you go to sketch, when you go to start drawing, is we are stuck in our culture right now in what's kind of a necessary evil as productivity. And, you know, people want to drop so many drawings so fast, and that's not what it's about. And if I were to rush everything I just did in this drawing, I'm going to go ahead and hit tab, and when you hit tab, it just does this. If I were to rush this drawing, I would not have created this right here. I don't know whether this facing here would look horrible and I'd just be working at it to this moment. I'd be making stroke and stroke and stroke trying to figure it out. But no, I was concentrated. I stayed true to being patient with my work and kind to it, treating it as though it were part of myself. And that's very important, is not to think in productivity. It's not about work versus hour. It's just about, and it's not even work. It's not about art versus hour. It's about the art. It's about that sincerity. It's about what I was talking about earlier, the handwriting and being true to having the stroke that you have in your work.
We got one last question here for you, Justin.
All right.
Do you always sketch your paintings like this, or do you sometimes use big brushes and over time decreasing the brush size for more detail?
Well, I've learned here and there a lot about painting. My favorite is definitely drawing, like I was talking about earlier in the webinar. And however, sometimes I do paint, and sometimes let's see here. I'm actually I don't have it on here. Sometimes I do big paintings, and they're very vague, and I'm not as good at it as I would like to be because my passion's not there. However, I do know that when painting, it really is the same rule. You know, have no expectation, find form in that painting, and I mean, you can paint from life. It's not my preference, and when I paint from, I'll start with a big bulky form, and I'm going to add a new layer to kind of show you this. Painter has so many great brushes. I could go on and on and on and on. And this is actually one that I made for Painter that's in the software. It's under the charcoal, and it's Concept Art Jitter Smooth, and you can find that in the trial. And it's just a square right here. And now the reason I like this is because you can find, make sure I'm on that layer, you can find a shape, and if you know your foundations, if you know like your shadows and your light and your reflective light, well, chances are you're going to find form in that painting. So it's the same concept, except for paint, and you're working with bigger brushes. So yeah, I mean, I have and I do sometimes. I think it's fun, but it's definitely not where my passion is, where I find my pen strokes work. But you can see right here, I mean, this really nothing. It's a scribble. But you can see paint works. It's just a bulkier form. Oh, I deleted the wrong layer there. There we go. Well, that's most definitely the most important thing is don't start working and feel like you have to do something specific. All of it's really the most important thing. And you can add perspective, like if I want to add a horizon. I'm not a perspective master. I have been reading a lot on it. But if I want to add a perspective line right here, and just adding this line and maybe some clouds, which again, maybe my lovely spins and whistles. Adds just that one more layer of depth there. I think that's it. I think I'm gonna sign this off, and I tend to sign my last name first. I'm going to call it finished. Any more questions or anything you want to add to that, Jamie?
There was one more question that came in. It said, I'm impressed with your minimal approach to painter tools. Do you essentially stick to scratch tool and digital airbrush?
Yes, yes I do. And again, the reason that I choose Painter is because I've tried other softwares. Oh my God, you can ask my gal. I go through and I'm like, does this one have like a better, how can I take advantage of this or Photoshop or this? And it always comes back to Painter. And when you use Painter, or maybe you are, whoever that may be that was asking that, you're going to see a difference. You're going to feel a difference. It feels organic, feels like when I'm using my Cintiq, like I'm actually, painting. It's not a digital, it doesn't feel like pixels. It doesn't feel like pixels. It feels like a pen. And so in Painter, I'm able to do this right here. Like you see this whole process. I can't do this traditionally. I can make those lines traditionally, and I do believe it's the same process, but I'm not able to work in the same light. And I'm not able to work in the same warmth that I am with a pen, although I will say that when I am sketching with a pen, which I think is very important to do as well as digital. I think it's a balance. It's not like one or the other. It's you should be doing both, and you should be balancing them. There's also a warmth there too. There's a different kind of warmth, but it's all about what you bring to it. What I always ask myself, like when Painter came out with particle brushes, well, a lot of people are I mean, quite frankly, like, how do we harness this? This is so incredible. We don't even know what to do with it. And they're so incredible that people, I think, should buy Painter just for the particle brushes, in my opinion. However, the question I have to ask myself when I use each one of them is, now how can I take advantage of this? So when you go down Painter's tools, I like the scratchboard and airbrush because they're simple and it proves my theory and it proves my process. That I'm not using something fancy to create something like this. But when you're going down Painter's arsenal of tools, look through each one and say, how can I take advantage of this tool? How can it help me? I mean, that's the point of having a tool, and that's what really they are, is a digital tool that you're able to use in your work. So in your work, you have to ask yourself that question. How is it going to help me, and what can I do with this to make myself a better artist?
Well, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you, Justin, for such a good webinar. Everyone can look out for it on our Facebook page. We will post it when it's uploaded onto the YouTube page. And thanks again.
Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Have a good day, everyone.